Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Come on in and grab a seat. Good morning. We were supposed to start with song this morning, but a couple things came up, and I want to get up here and let you know we're having some pretty major technical issues this morning. So if the slides just freeze, just keep singing, and just bear with us. We're not sure what's going on, but everything's kind of not working right. So hang in there with us on that. Also, I've got a card. I've got a card here that I want to read to you from Chase and Megan and Sammy Bohannon. Thank you so much. We have been so touched and humbled by your generosity to our family and by the spirit with which you've embraced our sweet Sammy. He is a fortunate little boy to have so many believers lifting him up in prayer and wrapping him in love. We appreciate all of you beyond measure. Love, Chase, Megan, and Sammy. And we love you, Sammy. Also, I do want to mention that the last Endless Summer Barbecue, I know, it's coming in, the Endless Summer Barbecue. The last one is this Wednesday night. It was supposed to be last week, but we scheduled it. So come on out in droves and eat up all the rest of our food. And we'll have hamburgers and hot dogs, and you bring sides and things, and we will have a great time this Wednesday night from 6 to 7 here, or as long as you want to stay, and we'll have a great time. So plan to come and be with us. Also, next Saturday is the back-to-school bash, the end-of-summer church day at Venture River. We have reserved, we get a free pavilion spot. You can bring outside food, so you can bring a cooler, and there'll be a spot labeled Reedland Church. You can leave all your stuff there, go back there during the day, have a picnic, and it's only $17 a person. We do have to pay with one check. So if you are planning to go, I need to know this week by about Wednesday, by the end of the day Wednesday. And then we will cut a check for that amount of people. And you just show up Saturday. We will all meet there at the gate at 10 a.m. You give me your money, and we'll pay with one check, and we'll all go in and have a great time at Venture River. In the past, we've had, 20, 30 people go, had a great time. So it's open to all ages, anybody who wants to go, but I will need to know, if you haven't already told me, by the end of the day, Wednesday, so we can make sure we get that check cut. We have a very special worship service today. Today is what we're calling a family meeting. And so here in a few minutes, after we sing and share in communion, I'm going to get Penny and Terrell and Jean up on stage, and we're going to go through some of these big topics of the staff transition, the building renovation, what our vision is, and we're going to share that with you. And we are going to have an opportunity during that for questions. So I'm going to give you my cell phone number right now. If you don't have it, if you want to put it down in your phone, during that interview you can text me questions, and if it's something that we haven't already covered, then we will try and ask that during the interview. So my number, it's 270-836-3362. Okay, so if you want to put that on your phone, if you don't have it, and just be ready in case you have a question, it's 270-836-3362. And if you don't have it, if you didn't get that, if you forget it or you think of a question and somebody else here, just text somebody you have. Most people have my number. And during the presentation, I'll be checking my phone so that we can answer those questions as well. All right? We are so excited everybody's here this morning. If you're visiting, we are so glad you're here. And this might look a little bit different this morning than it normally does, but we are thrilled that you're with us. I'm going to invite Jean up here. We're going to begin in song.
Okay, around the theme of family, I'm going to be singing a lot of songs about our relationship with God and our relationship with one another. So let's stand as we sing the greatest command. Love one another, for love
Good morning, church. Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, there is so much joy and excitement, so much sadness and grief, so much everything going on right now. And we need your presence to help us with all of it. We are a family with plans for the future and struggles in the present. Please walk with us through every bit. Put your arms around all those who are hurting. The Bloomingburgs, the Blomers, the Barnes family, and others who have lost loved ones or are facing health challenges, or who are feeling lonely and forgotten. Your closeness is the only thing that will truly bring comfort Bless our family meeting today as we move forward with all these changes to our building. Please also bless those who have been working so hard to make it a reality. And as we start these renovations and upgrades to our church home, let us also look to any improvements we can make to your home here in our hearts. Help us, Lord, in preparing our hearts for whatever your plans are for this congregation. Pour out your Spirit on us and bring revival and renewal to each and every one of us. The community has been talking about our building and how different it's looking. Let them also see how we as a body are coming alive in the Spirit, bringing light to the darkness that's all around us. You are needed here more than ever, and we want to be part of that work. Give us what we need, show us what you want, and lead us forward to the future you have planned for us. And let us do it all for your glory and in your name. Amen.
Last week, I shared with you my struggles resulting from the loss of my taste and smell, and how through the trial, I realized the magnitude of God's goodness. It was just a sliver of his goodness missing that was the cause for my depression. And I thought to myself, if that was just a sliver, what a dark and terrible world it would be should all of God's goodness ever be stripped from me. What misery that would be without his presence, without his goodness. And then I realized That's what Jesus did on the cross. That's what he experienced for us. Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? When I came around to all these realizations, I was filled with joy. I realized I would never have to experience that separation because Jesus paid the price and ripped the curtain of separation. And I am so excited about the day when heaven comes down to earth and we get to experience God's goodness fully, all because of Jesus and what we are joined together right now remembering.
And that's what the cup and the bread does for us. Help us to remember exactly what we have through Jesus. We have connection with him. So let's pray. None of us have ever known, Lord, what it's like to be completely separated. After we have accepted you, you have been right beside us throughout. And I can only imagine what it would be like to have that feeling of being alone. But what's great is that we don't have to feel that way. And Jesus, as the representation, came down. As we spoke about in class, he was the stair step from that linked heaven and earth together. He came down, lived his life, died for us, and left a stairway to heaven for us to walk up and join with you. And what's wonderful is that we get to experience that kingdom now. We don't have to wait. That you are here with us, and we experience you in every day that we live. But we also have eternity to look forward to as well. So through his death, and mainly through his resurrection, we have hope, because you raise us up from our graves. And we take this cup and we take this bread, remembering that, but also remembering our future through you, future on this earth and future in our heaven with you. So thank you for this joy. Thank you for this hope and the peace that you give through Jesus. And pray all this in his name. Amen.
Today's scripture is from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 through 16. So Christ gave himself the apostles. Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors and teachers, to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God, and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. Then we will no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves, and blown here and there by every wind of teaching, and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become, in every respect, the mature body of him who is the head, that is, Christ. From him the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work.
Thank you, John, for the reading of God's Word. We want to invite all of our 2 to 5-year-olds to head to Kid Power now. So if you are in that age group, just head out these doors right over here, and your teachers will meet you, and you'll have an awesome and exciting time. I want to share with you guys the beginning and the end of Psalm 90. Psalm 90 starts this way. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn people back to dust, saying, return to dust, you mortals. 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or a watch in the night. Psalm 90 begins by establishing that God is eternal, that he works from everlasting to everlasting, that his scope is so much wider than ours. And yet it ends in our own lifetime. May your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest on us. Establish the work of our hands. Yes, establish the work of our hands. We serve a God whose scope is eternal, but his work is in the here and now. And as we lead this congregation of Christ's eternal church, we live in two worlds. We live in a world where it's the kingdom and the purposes of the kingdom and his eternal kingdom, and that is first and foremost. And if the purposes of the kingdom were that Reedland Church were to cease to exist so God could do a different work somewhere else, we would gladly go with God. But our other foot is in this organization here. And our belief is that God has confirmed that he's not done with us yet, that he has a lot more to establish of the work of our hands right here for us to contribute to his kingdom. And so that's what this is about today. This is about the fact that we live in God's kingdom. We're not about elevating our organization. Not at all. We're about elevating his kingdom. But if God's choice, and we believe it is to work in our community through us in this organization, then we want that work to be established, and we want to be great stewards of it. Great stewards of a building that was built by the sacrificial donations of people who are dead and gone, but believed that what they did and every dollar they gave and every brick they laid was going to matter in 2023. And so we want to believe that every brick we lay and every dollar we give and everything we do is going to matter in 2053 or 2073. And so we have been working for the entire history of this church, but specifically for the last 5 or 6 years, we have been working very hard on a lot of things that were very frustrating because the pandemic happened in the middle of it. We had a lot of plans we thought were going to happen 2 or 3 years ago, but God said, no, that's not my timing. And it gave us more time to work and be good stewards. And we want to share with you this morning about how some of those plans are coming to fruition. And one of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is we've worked really hard to say, what are the invisible barriers to us? What are the things that we're doing, presenting ourselves as, the color of the brick, whatever it is that cause people to drive by and go, I don't want to be part of that. And how can we remove those? And some of this remodel has just been about that. Just making it look warmer and more friendly so people say, that looks like a place I could want to be. And so I was really struck much earlier than I expected to be that somebody had that reaction to what was going on here. And you may have met the Dooms. They've been around for a couple months now. But I'm going to invite Brandon up here, and I'm going to ask Brandon to just share the thoughts that they had as they were driving by our church building, watching brick get painted and stuff, and why that translated to them being here.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Kind of reiterating on what he said, when you come to church on Sunday mornings, it's not to get your weekly fix of the Word. I mean, we're supposed to be doing that each and every day at home with our families. So what is one of the many reasons we come together as a church on Sundays? Well, that's to become equipped to grow God's kingdom. And so you come corporately together to get equipped, to be warriors, go out and do, show the community God's love. And, in Scripture, when they would see the early Christians, called the Way, it was, maybe they were called the Way because of the way they did things. People noticed, look at how they love one another. So, yes, what you're doing is noticeable. So, we live in Reedland and been in Reedland for years and have drove by your church thousands of times. We go to the lake a lot. We're just right over on Epperson Road. And have seen this church my whole life. Well, just in, a couple of months, probably prior to when we came, we noticed that you guys painted. And we said, wow, that looks great. Look how, it really looks great, the new gray, changing the color and everything. And we had were starting to consider looking for a new church. The church we were at just wasn't really, they were just going backwards. I mean, they really were not growing spiritually, physically, or even, emotionally. And so we're really at the point really thinking to look at another church. Just notice the building. And then, just as God works things out in His perfect timing, we get a mailer in the mail. And even in the short little bit that you guys, it was so perfectly worded, the short little bit that y'all had on that mailer, we read a lot of things that we liked. Multicultural, I wish I would have got it and read it so I could be refreshed on it, but it immediately made us want to come visit. We're like, okay, this is the type of church that we like. We historically like contemporary, non-denominational churches. And that is because of the invitingness, the openness to anybody coming in, anybody, as long as you believe in Jesus as your Lord and Savior and know that He is the only way to get to heaven, then that is fine. We don't care about the other historical or traditional things. So we had never been to a Church of Christ church, so we knew historically you guys were Church of Christ because we lived in Reedland our whole lives. So, but hey, we didn't care. We're going to come anyways, And, okay, so we get here, first day. Yeah, the building being painted is great. The mailer, was very inviting. But what made us stay? That's you guys. And the way when we got here, we loved how everyone was involved in singing. Everybody that's not Church of Christ, they don't use instruments, like that's weird for some reason or other. We actually love it because when you at a church where they're playing instruments, maybe 25% of the people are involved in singing. We noticed right off the bat, we're talking 75, 85% of you guys were involved in singing. Why? Because you have to. So we love that. The first day, everybody's like, well, how was that? How was, they'd say Reedland Church of Christ, we loved it. But the biggest thing was how amazing you guys were, how friendly you were. I don't know how many people came up and introduced themselves to us. And if you ever have that little voice in your head where you're worrying, hey, there's someone new, I don't want to freak them out. Hey, you got a 50-50 chance. You know what I'm saying? Just go for it. So we loved it, and we just want to thank you guys for being who you are. And we are just so excited to be here. We're so excited to tell everyone about you guys and the things you're doing and the things that your hard-earned money is being devoted to works. So we thank you all very much.
I wanted to start with that. I'm going to invite Penny and Terrell and Jean up here now. And I wanted to start with that just so you could hear the voice of somebody. And I was just so humbled whenever I heard that from Brandon originally. Penny, let me give you this microphone here. Because that's what we've said since the very beginning was we told the architects, we told the designers, we want, when people drive by and see our building, and in how we present ourselves to the community, we want them to see on the outside what is already here on the inside. We're not changing who we are. This is who we are. But we want people to know that. And so just in that part of what we're doing, thank you. Thank you for giving us that feedback, and thank you for being here and giving us a chance. And we are, we're going to freak you out too. I mean, don't worry, that's coming. We'll freak you out at some point. So is there anybody here who hadn't been freaked out at some point? I mean, it's going to happen. You haven't met all the weirdest ones of us yet. We're saving that for later. No, just kidding. So let's start out here. I want to start out with Jean. In case you're visiting and don't know, Jean is a shepherd here. So our shepherds are the people who are the spiritual leaders of the church and help guide us spiritually. Penny is the head of our administrative committee. And so our administrative committee are the ones who do the heavy lifting on making sure budgets work and trash gets picked up and supplies get ordered and people have what they need to do ministry work. And then Terrell is our Minister Emeritus. I don't know if he would be. He was the lead minister here for 39 years, has retired, and now he is on staff doing spiritual direction and has helped shape the culture of this church tremendously. And I am just the interviewer this morning. And so I want to start with Jean and say, Jean, as a shepherd, who do you want us to be? Who do the shepherds want us to be a generation from now? Why does that matter that we have a vision for who we are, and what barriers, are we trying to remove to keep that from, allow that to happen?
Well, I think our vision is seen in our statement, follow Jesus with us. We want to be followers of Jesus. The scripture reading that John read talked about us all leading to the head, growing into the head, which is Christ. All of us knit together. You come back to what are our priorities. It is loving God and loving each other and loving our communities. That's what our priorities are in trying to make a difference in people's life, just like Jesus did.
And so if we look 30, 40 years down the road, there's a lot of, in America, there's a lot of concern about the state of the church, the state of giving. Will churches have to close their doors? What do we want to see at Reedland? Do we want to see, we run out of money, we close the doors, everybody disperse? I don't think that's what we want. What's our dream 30, 40 years from now for this congregation?
We'd love to see the church grow. We'd love to see the church grow. I dare say, if you were to look back at the church 50 years ago, you want to go back like that, what was the church like then, and how do we look now compared with what we were then? Would have never anticipated what a lot of the changes that have taken place. And I would not be so presumptuous to know what it's going to look like 50 years from now in several generations. But I do know that the core values are that we want to be followers of Christ, and all of us seeking a closer relationship with Christ and encouraging each other in that relationship with Christ as we reach out into the communities.
And so in each generation, we have a choice. We can invest in what makes us comfortable now or what makes us effective in the future. Now, Taro, you have been here at Reedland for a long time helping to shape this culture. When you look back at your 40 years of history here, how is our vision for the future rooted in our past?
Almost 39 years ago, I preached my first sermon here. The first Sunday in September is 1984 is when I actually began working here and retired at the beginning of this year. Teresa and I had a lot of different kinds of emotions when we visited here. You've heard this story, but it happened to us. We had pews, and we sat down right maybe in front of where Jerry is sitting, Jerry and Aaron. That would be just behind you, Whitney. And we were here for the first Sunday. Took our seat, had been there maybe 30 seconds, and a couple came in and said, "You're sitting in our seats." And they I was hired and effectively managed to run them off in about 2 years. It seems like there was a clash from the beginning. But what I did find here, this church was already different from churches of Christ in the area. I sensed that there was an opportunity for some good things to happen in this church. I didn't know what that would require. I didn't know exactly what it looked like. But from the beginning, there was an emphasis on family. And that word family was more than just husband and wife and 1.7 or 2.4 kids. It was a place where people were welcome. And for 40 years, the past 40 years almost, it has been a time trying to figure out how to make this church the kind of church that people would be welcome into and would see that there is a place for them. And a lot happened during that period of 40 years that made this church one that is very unique in this community. We have, as a church, done many firsts. We were the first church in Kentucky that provided child care or a service where children who were displaced or orphaned or disowned by parents could come and find a home here. The Reedland Church was the first. It modeled the ministry of child care after a church in Nashville. This church was a first to prioritize its singing in the way that we do. That if we are going to be a non-instrumental church, if we are going to encourage congregational singing, let's do that in the best way that we can. And that has always been a priority in this church. And things like that pave the way for this church to still improve itself. We've never felt like we arrived. We never felt like we had it together. Some of the big issues that were issues for churches of Christ at the time were not big issues here. We had issues to work on, but not some of those bigger ones. And over a period of time, this church has looked for a way to be sensitive to people on the outside and let them know that they were wanted on the inside. One of the difficult things about that involves the use of buildings. You may not know this, but church buildings were not the first things that Christians built after Jesus died on a cross and was resurrected. It was a couple hundred years before church buildings were built. People met in homes and in public places. But as they began outgrowing homes, they began looking for ways for church to be done differently, maybe to be done in some ways better. So buildings were erected. This one was built in 1964, and not a lot has been done to it. For example, the ceiling you see, it's the same one. It's never been painted or changed. The interior is much the same way as it was then. But I can remember from the first day that I was here, people talking about the rotten acoustics back in the annex. We've got to do something with those acoustics. There were things about the facilities here that were not what they needed to be for us to accomplish what we sought to accomplish with them. And that has led us into the current renovations that we're facing now, asking how do we become the church that we need to be, that's practical in the way it's built and used, and the dream for that building for the future.
Let me just go through a couple quick slides to show you some of the changes we're going to be talking about this morning. You're already familiar with most of them, but one is that, if we can get the slides up, is the renovation that we're referring to. We are halfway through it because we did a lot of work ahead of the contract, but we are now entering into a contract with Black & Son, who has been very good to us, and we're very excited to work with them to close in this front porch. For years, I looked at that porch and I said, why do we have this porch? What possible purpose could this have served? It was a smoking porch. I don't know if y'all knew that. That's where everybody in 1964 went out to smoke between Bible class and service. We're going to close that in, and we're going to turn it into a gathering place, like where we have the donuts now, about 3 times as big. It'll be like this. It'll also have a bar table, tall pub tables and stools as well. It'll be a space to gather, a space that can be opened on a Friday night. It'll have its own bathroom, facilities accessible to it as well. You can have a kind of a Starbucks on a Friday night. You can have better access to the building, better security in how we flow into the building, and we'll get into some of that here in a few minutes. We're also going to secure our children's area, so there'll be secure check-in, and that children will have to be checked in and out of our children's area. We're going to have a brand new women's restroom. We're going to have a new unisex ADA bathroom and a new children's bathroom. And we will, as we've said before, paint the men's room. So that one hopefully will come a few years down the road. Also, if we go on to the next slide, and that's some sail shades over the playground. Let's go to the one of Jared here. We have also offered, and he's accepted, Jared Mannon to come and join us as our family development minister. This is a change as well, in that rather than calling him an associate minister, we had a group of people here within the congregation who got very, very excited about the idea of multi-generational connections. And so we are asking Jared to come in and work with our children and our teenagers in a way where the object of his ministry is not the children. It's the families that have children. And so we want to be able to come. He'll still do a lot of, typical events, Winterfest, things like that. But we're asking him to come alongside families and help give you the resources that you need to be spiritual leaders to your children, and come along spiritual orphans and connect them with families that can do that. And so we're very excited about that. And when Jared comes, we're actually going to send him to Tennessee to do some training with somebody who's been doing this. And then we're going to bring that guy, his name's Johnny Markham, here to do some training with us. And then the third change, which is not in a slide, is that we also, about 5 years ago now, actually changed the name to be Reedland Church. And it didn't really get a lot of attention until we changed the sign out there. And so that change was one in order to say, hey, if that is a barrier for anybody, we elevate that we are a church, that we are Christ's church above being a church of Christ. We are not cutting off ties with other churches of Christ, but we are Christ's church. And if anybody has, for some reason or another, been burned by that name or that brand, we don't want that to be a hindrance. We want them to know that we are a church first, that we are Christ's church first. So these changes, Terrell, and then I'm going to bounce to Penny with the next question, but Terrell, do you think these changes that we're making, do you think they track well with our vision and who we have wanted to be historically?
An odd thing is that some of us people who have been around a while, and some of you predate me. I'd love to just see the hands of people who predate me here at Reedland. Not as many as there used to be. Remember, I ran some people off, but I didn't mean to. But I got credit for a lot of that. But the dream has always been that this would be a place where people would be loved, where people would be accepted. And what we are doing now is rooted in that dream. This is not something new. And for those of us who may be a little bit older and we feel a little stretched, a little uncomfortable, a little bit like, I don't like changes. Well, the only time you will forever be at a point where you don't have to change anymore is when you die. And then there's some poetic justice that takes place because God's going to change you in the tomb and turn you back to dust. So change is a part of life. And what we're doing now, while it may feel a little strange or odd, or we may ask, is there really a need for that? Remember, growth comes by looking forward, not by looking backwards. So we're asking the kinds of questions of what do our parents of 2-year-olds need today? What do parents of 10-year-olds need? What do families need? And we're asking that so that we can keep the dream this church has always had of looking forward and addressing how we can be a church that provides for family, whether it's a young couple who have no children, a couple with children, a couple with teenagers, grandparents who are watching their kids grow up here, or if you're a single person who is looking for community. How do we continue striving to be that kind of church? So what we're doing now is fully rooted in what this church has always tried to be, but it looks different and feels different of necessity.
All right, so we're going to get into the challenges to that vision, but before we do, I'll make sure this vision is real clear in your mind. I want you to think 10 or 20 years from now, or it could be 2 weeks from now. A family is driving by our building. They're new to the community, and they drive by our building, and we want them to look over. We want to see that cross lit. And can you go back to the picture, Abby, of what the building's going to look like? We want them to see the pergola out front and the fire pit, and maybe it's at night, and there's a small group that's around that fire pit, and they're laughing, and their kids are playing out in the grass in front, and they're driving by, and they're going, man, that looks like a friendly place. That looks like a place where I would be welcome. Maybe we should try and go there Sunday morning. So they come on Sunday morning, and they show up, and they walk in, and they walk through the doors, and we have the level of secure entry that people are used to at places like schools. And they feel safe when they come in the door. But they're also welcomed. And they're welcomed with coffee and donuts and people who are smiling and laughing. And they come into a great worship assembly. And after church, somebody comes up to him and says, hey, we'd love for you to be part of things. Oh, you have a kid who's 15 and they're going to be getting their permit soon? I bet that's nerve-wracking. I've been there. You know what? We have a group that's getting together of other parents of teenagers to talk through some of that. If you guys are interested, we'd love to come alongside you and be part of that process with you so we can do that together. And they feel like, wow, this place has something to offer. But they also have a 3-year-old. And they want to take their 3-year-old to class. And they go and they can securely check their child in with all the highest level of best practices. They can get a band or a number that they know that their child is safe and that somebody else, an estranged family member, isn't going to come and take that child, or that their child is safe and that they will be the only one to check their child out at the end of that time. And all of these things work together. Even their experience when they go in the bathroom, and as a young mother, they have a changing table they can use. They have room. It's clean and nice. All these things work together to make them feel like, wow, this place was prepared for my arrival. They thought ahead about the things that would make me feel comfortable, and I like that because they cared enough about me. That's the vision that we want to have. That's the vision we want to have of what this church can be 10, 20 years from now, rather than a leaky roof, an old building, and people coming in saying, well, gosh, they should have torn this building down 20 years ago. The people here must not really care. That's why this matters. It's not for our comfort. It's for God's mission. Now, any vision has challenges, right? And we got some dreamers, but we also have some practical people. And so us dreamers then go, hey, make it happen, make it work, right? So, Penny, what are the challenges to these kind of dreams that we're talking about?
Okay. Hey, everybody. Good morning. I wish you had this bird's eye view that I have looking out at your faces. Whenever I have this opportunity to sit up here in front of you, I like to look out and think, man, these are my people. These are it. This is who I'm going to be encouraged by and encouraged for the rest of my life. These are the people that I'm going to do this life with. And let's bring other people in. Because God made as many different people as we can imagine, and they're all there for us to learn and to grow with. But I look out, it's just wonderful. And thank you for welcoming me back after a long absence. But Rob and I probably get a prize for driving the furthest. We drive an hour here. And it's worth every minute of it. We love this church for all the reasons you love this church. We didn't drive by it and see the changes, but we would have been impressed by it had we. We come here for you. We come here because you are also along this journey, along the same journey that we're on, and trying to follow Jesus just like we are. So I got off script, sorry, but I can't help it when I look out and see your faces to do that. So I am chair of the ACT, the administrative committee team, along with Jerry Gilbert, John Brillhart, Bob Bloomingberg, Glenn Anderson is our shepherd liaison. Is that all of us?
And Brenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brenda. Hi, Brenda. And Brenda. I knew I was leaving somebody out. So we have been tasked by the shepherds just to come along beside them to serve this church administratively. So we believe that God has gifted us with some administrative skills. And our job is to serve this church in that capacity. So one of the things that we do is we work with the budget, which probably sounds pretty boring to you, but it has to be done. And so you want me just to go over kind of the budget, the construction budget?
Yeah, just tell them how much it's going to cost.
All right, let's just talk about how much this is going to cost, because it's not free, right? So we have been blessed with a church that has been saving for this day. I really don't know how long that they've been saving. Somebody that's been here 40 years can tell us. But we have been saving for the day that we needed to renovate this building, because our physical plants have to be renovated on occasion. They deteriorate. So we have been saving, and we've been putting money back for this day, and we have been able to accumulate around $550,000. Now, some of that came recently through a gift of the sale of a house next door that was gifted to us after it burned, and then we were able to sell it, I believe, around $200,000. $260 from that. So a good bit of that came from that. So we have been blessed with having no debt in this church and having a surplus, a fund that we've been setting aside for 40 years-ish so that we could renovate this building. So we have about $550,000. The construction quote that we got to do the things that Brian is told you about is going to be right around $700,000. So it's a lot. And because of the inflation that's been going on in the last few years, maybe some partially due to the tornado that happened, we've seen construction cost rate go up about 40% is what the construction company told us just since we started getting this quote, unfortunately. So from the time that we asked for a quote on our building till now, our construction costs have gone up 40%. So if that had not happened, we would have had the cash to have completed this project. What we propose to do now, since we don't have the cash, is to do this. We get our $700,000 budget, which is a pretty firm budget. We don't believe we'll go over that budget.
Yeah, it's the builder will not charge us a penny more than what they have quoted.
Unless we change the scope of what we do, we're going to come in at that budget, okay? In addition to that $700,000, the Reedland Church is putting another $50,000 budget on top of that to do some of the things that's not in that quote. An example of that would be repaving the parking lot, paving, concreting out front and getting some of the furniture. I think we have some asbestos to remove. That's going to be our cost. That's not in that quote. So we have a contingency fund of another $50,000 on top of the $700,000 quote. So that's going to get us to around $750,000, okay? We have $550,000. We're liquid. We have $550,000 cash in the bank. We want to leave $100 there. Okay? We don't want to drain our coffers. We want to leave it $100 there for emergencies, for additional repairs to the building, for whatever we need in the future. Okay? So we're talking about we have about $450,000 to apply in cash to the renovation cost of $750,000. So you can do the easy math on that. That's going to leave us about $300,000 shy that we're going to need to either raise funds or to borrow to accomplish this mission, okay? So to get us started, now that we have told our contractor that we want to do this, he believes that he can start right away. September is what we're hearing, right? Is that still true?
Yeah, that's the initial thought. We'll get a firm timeline hopefully soon.
Okay, so this is going to happen, right? We're on it, okay? So we're talking about starting this project in September and being done, he said, within 3 months. I've been trying to add a little room onto my house now for about 6 months, so it's hard for me to imagine that being done in 3 months, but they assure me that they have assured us that it will. So to take care of our immediate costs, we have already taken out a construction loan with Independence Bank of $300,000. So we just have a line of credit sitting out there for $300,000 that we can use if we need to use it. Okay, so our first plan is to use our cash that we have on hand. The $450,000 we'll spend up to that, leaving $100 in our account. We'll spend our $400 and then start tapping into the construction loan. Okay.
Now we have an annual operating budget as well, and now we're hiring somebody. So do these things impact each other? What does that look like?
They do impact each other somewhat, okay. So we do have a normal operating budget that is just based off of what you guys decide it should be. I was thinking about this yesterday as I was kind of preparing my thoughts. And I run a small business, as most of you know, and this is what happens in a church is completely backwards to what happens in a business, because in a business, I know what my expenses are, so then I just go charge that much, right, to cover my expenses. That's opposite here. You guys, the church, we, the people, decide what this church is going to have to operate on through our choice every Sunday and what we decide to give. Nobody is coming to you and saying, hey, this is what, we're going to spend, we're dividing it by, 50 families and everybody's got to give this much, which is basically what I do in my work, okay? I do it backwards. It's the other way. You set the tone for what we can do and where our vision takes us. We do, the church, okay? So we do have a normal operating budget based off what our normal contributions are. And from that normal operation, we have contributions that come in, and then we have normal operating expenses, such as salaries being the largest portion of that budget, but also maintaining the facility, our ministry areas, our missions, our benevolence work that we do. So all of those things get taken into account every year. We look at what we think our contributions are going to be, and then we set our expenses to match the contributions, not the other way around. So this is driven by the church. So it impacts, even though these funds are set aside, this would impact our normal operating budget if, in fact, we end up converting that construction loan into a long-term term loan, okay? So worst case scenario is that we have the whole additional $300,000 that we have to convert into a long-term loan, okay? That would be worst case scenario. We don't think that that's going to be the case, but that's what we look at. We practical people look at what the worst case scenario could be. So if we did that, that would add from principal and interest payments around $30,000, just shy of $30,000, that would now start coming out of our normal operating budget. Okay? So those principal payments on that debt, those interest payments on that debt every year, now would start coming out of operating. So instead of being able to use our operating funds for missions or for benevolence or for our youth or for our ministry staff, whatever that is, now we're paying debt. We're at least pulling that much over and using it to pay debt. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, so we have Jared coming. He's going to start in October, and we are able, no question about it, we look at the budget, we're able to afford to have him to do what we're doing, and we then are going to spend down this capital, but keep some in reserve.
Yes.
And we believe we're going to be able to raise some money, but we also believe that God is taking care of, He's been through this process from the beginning to the end, because if we weren't, then we would just sit in a building and let it decay around us because we would just hold money in the bank. We believe that God gave us that money to use to advance His kingdom because we want the next generation to have this facility ready to go, ministries ready to go as well.
Yeah, he didn't ask us to sit on it. He wants us to use it for His glory. Absolutely.
We don't want to be the ones that bury the talent.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
We
now,
want to.
Let me bring this over to Gene for a minute. So it sounds like we got to raise some money, but Gene wants to share a little story with you of why we believe God's already got this in the bag. He's done some things that have confirmed over and over to us again that we're going the right direction, and He's presented an opportunity that we believe has already given us a head start on getting there. So Gene, why don't you share some of that with us?
We first started looking at expanding the building back in 2010. And in 2017, we began looking at children's safety and the restroom renovations. We were recipients of a major trust. I can't remember how much that was.
$15,000.
$15,000. And we immediately turned around and gave it to another congregation in the area that was needing it. And it was the next morning that the people next door decided, you know, we want to get rid of this house. Why don't we just donate it to the church and let the church... They don't go to church. And they don't go to church here.
And we really struggled with that decision to give away the $15,000 because we were like, we need to use it to do some of this early architectural work, but we decided this other church could go under without it. So we gave it to them, and then $260,000 God hands us the next day.
And so, and we've been working on architectural drawings and had actually sold the property and received the funds. Began working with Black & Son in 21, and we received a $100,000 donation from a donor that we feel like God has been blessing us hand over fist, okay? Brought unsolicited money to our doorstep. And so God has been blessing us in this direction. We feel like God's hands are all over it, and so we feel like this is something we need to continue to pursue. And
so we were brought an idea a few months ago that we kind of set aside until the right time. What was that idea?
Early on, I guess when we started sharing the vision of the dream and this fellowship area of the smoking porch. What a conversion, isn't it? That one of our newer members said, we had just suffered the loss of a beloved shepherd here, Royce Templeton. And he says, you know what we ought to do? We ought to name that area after Royce. And it touched us. And we thought at the right time, we'll come back to that. And so we feel like this is the right time now. So we're asking people to donate to the Royce Templeton Fellowship area. And we'll have a plaque with Royce's name. I mean, he was so beloved. And wouldn't Royce be excited with the number of young families we have coming here now recently? A lot of new families that he'd be excited about. And so anything that's going to help us to attract more people here. Royce was all about wanting to evangelize and bringing people to Jesus.
When I think about Royce, I think about him standing out there. He would be the one out at the front door greeting
He would
in the
live
new
out
area.
there.
Yes, he would.
He'd live out
we
there
had to
because-
say, "Come into worship, Royce.
Yeah.
Come into worship."
That's where he could welcome people, and that's where the donuts were. So he would. And so we sat down with Marilyn, before we said anything to anybody, we sat down with Marilyn and said, "Marilyn, are you okay with this?" And Marilyn said, "I'd be so honored by this. Royce would be so honored by this." And so we have put together some materials. We have already spoken with a number of people who have indicated that they will give in Royce's honor towards this. We do have
a small group.
Yeah, we do have, if that interests you, we do have some financial information about how to make that work the best tax-wise. That's very important, where it will decrease your tax liability rather than increase it. But we believe God's got this. To be honest, guys, the night that we decided to give the money to this other church, it was not a unanimous decision in the meeting. We left the meeting, agreed, okay, we all agreed, but we struggled with it. Royce said to me, when I told him, he said, "Well, that's an obvious one. We should obviously give it to the other church." And Royce, there's nobody that was pushing harder for us to do the things we needed to do to welcome people than Royce. And he said, "No, we obviously should have given that to the other church." We believe that God has been affirming what we have been doing all along the way. And we miss Royce dearly. But I cannot think of a better, if there's ever anything that we were going to do that would honor him, a room where we're inviting the community to greet and meet us. I mean, honestly, I don't know how we'd ever get him out of there. I don't know how we would have ever got him out of there. And so we believe that God's got this. We believe God's already got every penny that's needed for this. And any money beyond what is needed for this project that's raised will go to the vision that God has given us beyond this. The vision to expand the men's restroom, to repaint the fellowship hall and redo the kitchen out there, to put the what's it called?
Yeah, the canopy.
Canopy, pavilion up on our back property, and possibly to go towards an effort to create some type of future housing space for refugee families or single moms, which is a vision that God has seeded in this congregation that we're still trying to find the right fit for. So there's ways that God wants to use this property and this people, and anything that's raised beyond this is going to go towards moving into that next phase, because we believe that God has got a lot in store. Terrell, I want to throw this over to you. During this whole thing, we're also are in the process of working on adding some new shepherds. As we've said before, we have a couple of guys who have said, "I'm willing to serve. I'm just not willing to serve right now. I'm waiting for God's timing." And we are walking with them in that, getting in touch with them every so often, saying, "Hey, where are you with this?" And we are waiting for God to open up the doors for them to serve in this capacity. Why does that matter? And why do good leaders matter in doing something like this?
My Royce story is that I think Royce and I had a conversation that he had not had with anyone else. As we were talking about the renovation costs, he and I had a conversation about what it was going to cost to do this and how much each of us was willing to give, because among the shepherds, we'd already started talking about, we've got to model generosity to the church. And what would each of us be able to give? And I really cherished that conversation with Royce, because Royce wasn't much for putting pencil and paper together to come up with figures. That was delegated to Marilyn. Royce was the dreamer. And he dreamed a little bit that day. But what I want you to notice about that is, as a dreamer, Royce could make decisions, but he was the dreamer who threw the picture out there. And I think one of the horribly, horribly, horribly misunderstandings that people have of shepherds, and we still hear it occasionally, is that they make decisions for the church. This is going to come as a big surprise to you, so write it down. The shepherds almost never make decisions. Almost never. What they do is look for God's leading, and they listen to people and see if what they're hearing and what they're seeing is confirming where they sense it's time for us to move forward into that direction. The shepherds are people who dream with us and help us try to see our dreams become reality, so that by the time it's decided, hire Black & Son, in reality, that decision's already been made.
Let me illustrate this. If you were involved in any way in the ACT, the shepherds, the building committee, the ad hoc building committee that got put together, or the youth leadership team who had input on this, raise your hand. Just if you've been involved in any way in that, just raise your hand, okay? And there's at least that many more that aren't here this morning. There were probably 25 to 30 people in this congregation who've been actively involved in this planning and leading over the past 5 years that the shepherds have been in communication with.
So what we need isn't people who are shepherds who are eager to jump in and start making decisions. Actually, the Bible forbids that. The Bible forbids leaders who make decisions and force them upon the church. Jesus called that lording it over one another. Peter in 1 Peter chapter 3 said, shepherds are not people who boss people around. Shepherds are people who look for the direction God is dreaming and casting, and what they're sensing the pulse of the congregation to be, and they resource and energize to go that direction. They lead, they don't order. So I would like to suggest to all of you who have been approached about possibility of being a shepherd to kind of get it out of your head that this is a decision-making body of people. That is one thing explicitly forbidden shepherds to do in Scripture. Rather, they dream, they come alongside, they lead, they cast a vision, they resource, they show how it can be done. So if that's been one of your hesitations, then we just eliminated that. Yeah. Because shepherds don't do that. The shepherds we have now are people who have a vision for where God is leading this church, and they need people to come alongside them who share that vision, who can see that and will help and provide direction. They encourage, they bless. We check on people. We make a phone call. We visit a hospital. We let people know you're loved and cared for. That's what a shepherd does. So we have some in this church who, quite honestly, the church has more confidence in them maybe than they have in themselves. But listen to the voice of the church, because God is inspiring that voice. And we have some really good men in this church who can come alongside the 3 shepherds that we have now and can serve in that capacity. So I want to encourage them to go ahead and be making plans to do that. If you have a weakness, well, come along 3 other guys and work with them who are filled with weaknesses. They know they're weak, but God doesn't put it upon the shoulders of any one person to lead, puts it upon the shoulders of these 3 men we have now to have others come alongside them and lead with them and serving in that capacity. So I'm looking forward to the time that we affirm as a church the people that God says should serve alongside the 3 shepherds that we have now. We have a lot of people who can do that in this church. You don't have to be a Bible scholar. For goodness sake, don't bring in another one into this church. You got me and you got Brian, and Jared has a Master of Divinity, which means he sat in a classroom a whole lot. We don't need another Bible scholar. What we need are people who love people. People who care about people. That's the role of a shepherd. People who love and care about people. The heavy lifting biblical stuff, leave that to the guys who have some training. But when it comes to loving people, that's all we need with shepherds. People who love and are willing to be out in the front and say, I'll take this role. So we have people like that. Some of you know who you are. This church knows who you are. I just want to encourage all of us to answer the call of God when it comes to serve in that capacity.
All right, so one thing many of you know, some of you may not, is that our service is supposed to end any time between 11:15 and 11:30. And we try pretty hard to keep it towards 11:15. But today we're going to be closer to 11:30 because I did promise that you'd have an opportunity to ask some questions. So I have a couple here, and if you've got a question, you can text it to me now. I'm going to get to as many as I can, okay? The first one, I don't know if this is a question or a correction, but it says, the men's room needs changing tables as well. Dads change diapers too. Amen. You're right. That's true. But that's why we want to ask questions, because we always think we've communicated things well, and sometimes we haven't. And we need questions to say, hey, we didn't understand that. What we're doing over here with the restrooms is inside the secure children's area, there'll be a check-in door on this end, there'll be a secure door on this end, some of the classroom doors will be changed so that's all secure. There'll be a children's bathroom inside that area. So when children are in class, they don't have to leave the secure area to use the restroom. That's a children's only restroom. Next up from that, in what is currently our gathering place, will be a brand new women's room. It's got 4 fixtures, toilets, so it's got more fixtures than it has now. It's got a lot of space, more sinks. It'd be very easier to get in and out of. Hey, I always hate coming down from the youth room and the door opens and I'm standing face to face with somebody coming out of the women's room. That's a little awkward. So we're eliminating that whole scenario. You know, I know you women have thought that too, you know. Yeah, so we're eliminating that whole scenario because the door will be back more where the water fountain is. Nice new women's restroom. It'll have a changing table. But then in that corner where the entrance to the women's room is now, there's going to be a brand new unisex ADA bathroom. It's the John Grillhart bathroom. John has been coming here for how many years, John? 7 years, 6 years? And never once has this man complained that he is going out to the annex to use the handicap bathrooms. I have complained over and over again. And John has told me, listen, it's not a big deal. John would never ask for this. But the truth is, there's a lot of people who need a handicap accessible bathroom in this building. And we don't know what the future holds. And so we decided a long time ago, as soon as we can, we want to put a unisex handicap accessible bathroom. That bathroom will have doors that enter into this building and a door that enters into the new gathering place. Those doors can be alternatingly locked. So most of the time when you're here on Sunday morning, it will only open into the lobby. So the women's room is ADA. Anybody can use that bathroom, but if John's headed that way, I'm getting out of the way. I'm going to let John have it, right? But anybody can use that bathroom, but that's what it's for. It's an ADA accessible to take some of the pressure off the men's room until we're able to redo the men's room with changing tables and ADA and everything else. When we want to open up just the porch, we can lock this door and it can be open to just the porch and it can be a bathroom to use. We have that space for a meeting on a Friday night, like a Starbucks. And so it's a little hard to get your head around, but that is going to really help with all of our bathroom congestion until we can come back and spend another probably $50,000 to $70,000 later redoing the men's room. So hopefully that answers that question a little bit. The next question was, Royce was a big supporter of Julia when she came up with the idea of the gathering place. Julia was the one who came originally with the idea of the gathering place. It was a great idea. The only problem was, as soon as we did it, we knew it was too small. The moment we did it, we went, oh, this is a third the size it needs to be. And so we're going to be able to really fulfill the dream of what that would look like and what Roy saw in that idea when he championed it in this new space that's 3 times as large. And that's all I got as far as questions. So last chance, if anybody wants to ask a question here in this forum, of course you can always come up and ask individually. Oftentimes when a vision is laid out before a church, it's followed by pledge cards being handed out. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not handing out pledge cards. We're not asking you to make any kind of commitment. You can give in the basket. You can give online through Tithely on the website if you want to give. If you want to make a special contribution, that's fine. We would love for you to do that, but we're not asking you to do that. We believe God has already got this, and we will give you updates on the progress of that as we go. We are starting into this construction with a firm belief that God already has the end in sight. So we offer that to you as our firm belief that God is working in this. All right, I'm going to give anybody a chance to chime in before we close this out.
One comment. 40 years ago, I was 27, and in October, I'll be 67, so I've been here 40 years. When I came here, I was one of those younger people. I had a 3-year-old, and my son was born right after we got here. So I was one of those younger people who probably made everybody uncomfortable because of what I was looking for, what my family needed, what I thought younger families needed. But there was one thing that I didn't have when I was 27. I didn't have any money. 40 years has gone by. I have some money. I've saved. I've contributed to my 403B. Teresa and I have been maxing out Roth IRAs for a few years. You do that over a 40-year period of time, like you ought to. And by the time you get to be 65 or 70, you're actually the only people in the church who do have any money, because people younger than that don't. I want to ask the older people in this church to be generous. Pave the way for tomorrow for our kids who are here today and will be here tomorrow. If the older people don't do this, it won't happen.
I just want to say how excited I am. I just think the vision's great, and the other thing I want to say is, church, get ready. Just get ready, church.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to get our hearts ready for this, so let's all just devote ourselves to that. Look out there. You're my people, so we're on this journey together. Let's get our hearts ready and do this together, because God's moving in this church. Does anybody say amen to that?
Amen.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one other practical consideration for your information. Jared and his wife have entered into contract in a house. It's 3 doors down from Hans and Carrie, so I know that they're going to have good neighbors, and they hope to close on that house sometime around the 23rd of September. He's going to start on payroll October 2nd, and his first Sunday with duties will be October 8th, so we're very excited about that. When we start into construction, which we hope will be inside the month of September, that's what our indications are, we will immediately move all worship activities to the fellowship hall. We have a plan for it, and we believe it'll work. We can get about 250 chairs in there. We may be a little closer than we are in here, but we're going to be in there because we have bathrooms out there. And so there will be some changes as we go through that period of time, allowing them to disrupt asbestos and stuff without us breathing it in here. So anything like that you wonder about, we're trying to do this with a lot of transparency. And so just ask. Just ask. And if we don't have an answer, we'll try and find it out. When I began this morning, you guys can take your seats. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause for their participation. When I began, I read Psalm 90, and Brandon shared his story. And I'm got to tell you, I know that there's several of you families here that have come in the last few months and the last few weeks, and we are just so honored that you would count us as worthy to share your time on Sunday morning with. And we want to honor that with a pledge that we are seeking Jesus, and we want you to follow Jesus with us. When we read in Psalm 90, this final part of the psalm that says, "May the favor of God rest upon us, establish the work of our hands." Yes, establish the work of our hands. The most important thing here is that we are asking God for his favor. We are not a church who will ever demand that. We will not say, God's favor is on us and you better get with it. No, we are humbly standing before God saying, God, would you bless our sacrifice? Would you bless our offering? We don't have much to bring. We are poor and broken in spirit. We are humble in heart. But this is what we have, and we lay it at the altar. Will you bless it, and will you establish that? And just like Jesus took loaves and fishes and fed thousands. God has done that again and again and again and again. And so we pledge that we will follow Jesus in that process. We will follow where he leads. We will seek him first. We just ask that you come with us on that journey. And that as we do that, we say, God, may you establish the work of our hands for your glory. Steve's going to close us.
This is mic number one. Well, first of all, I'd like just to take a minute to thank all of you who have been praying for my family. Rhonda's dad, Bobby Burchett, he's been on our prayer list in the bulletin for quite some time, but he's been in the hospital for going on second week now and ended up having to be moved to ICU and finally has stopped responding to anything, so he's been moved to comfort care. And we thank you for your prayers and just ask for your continued prayers at this time. Appreciate that very much. This church has a very bright future. If we look at the vision that's been presented and all the exciting things that are coming and the way God has blessed us each step of the way to get us to where we are today, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's coming, and I hope you are as well. And I hope you will be in prayer about that as we move forward. It's going to be a lot of, with construction, there's always a lot of commotion and things going on and a lot of change, but it will be very positive. And I can't wait to see what kind of an impact this church is going to have on this community in the future. So hope you'll be a part of that, and please continue to be in prayer for that as well. Have a great week. Thank you for being here.